For the longest time I thought Kekkai Sensen would be among my favorites from 2015. Didn't go quite as I expected. My name is Kristin, this is STALK, and let's have a closer look where Kekkai Sensen went off the tracks. Kekkai Sensen takes place in an alternate universe version of New York in which a portal to the underworld is opened. It is now called Salem's Lot and inhabited by aliens, monsters and humans alike. It is here that we meet our protagonist Leonardo Watch, a newbie photographer and journalist who is stranded in the city because a mystical entity gave him the all-seeing eyes of the gods. While trying to set things back to normal, he gets involved with Libra, an association of superhumans who are supposed to protect humanity from supernatural threats. Throughout the first 8 to 10 episodes, we are introduced to the main characters in an episodic style. We hang out with Libra, see what their tasks are and find out about their abilities. In this fashion we get a feeling for the world, its rules and how humans and monsters really live together, while at the same time driving the plot, in search of the real cause of incidents threatening this more or less peaceful symbiosis. All of this build-up is supported by the animation. The city is alive and breathing. Since the town is covered in a thick fog, the set pieces could easily feel dull, but the various alien designs brought life and color back, and the backgrounds are gorgeous. For the first time I've actually been made aware of the sheer number of Gothic-style buildings in New York. Salem's Lot is breathtakingly beautiful. The character animation is vivid and intense, with awesome facial expressions and body language. Jokes tend to get a visual or an acoustic payoff, but it's the calmer moments that leave the biggest impression. The characters in Kekkai Sensen don't need to express their feelings because we can see them. The series pays attention to the smallest details, like the way a character blushes. In every scene, stuff is happening in the background and in the foreground, and it's not just stock models shuffling from A to B. It leaves you at a loss where to look first. All of this combined with the framing and editing emphasizes the impression of Kekkai Sensen's insanely high quality. The soundtrack composed by Taisei Iwasaki only fortifies everything that is great about Kekkai Sensen. It has jazzy elements, rock, blues, R&B, funk, huge orchestral pieces. The vocals reach from Japanese to English and even Hebrew. It is just as colorful as the inhabitants of Salem's Lot. Director Matsumoto also functioned as the sound director this time around. The way music, voices, sound and especially silence worked together depending on the scene and what it wanted to say was glorious. Thanks to the modern catchy ending theme, I discovered Unison Square Garden, which was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Kekkai Sensen is also one of the rare occasions where I recommend watching the dubbed version over the subtitled one. When I recommend an English dubbed cast over a Japanese one that has Mamoru Miyano, Riku Gemiya and Akira Ishida in it, you know something must have been really awry. The English dubbed cast doesn't have the same recognition value as the Japanese one, but this way you don't have to bother with the horrendous Funimation subtitles. It happens quite often that Funimation covers 2/3 of the screen in text, but in a show like Kekkai Sensen it makes for a rather aggravating experience. Based on everything I just said, if you were to tell me that Kekkai Sensen is one of the best shows you've ever seen, it's not that I don't understand where you're coming from. On a purely surface level, it kinda is. Around episode 9 it begins to stumble over its own feet. Without any kind of prior introduction, the narrative changes. This change was so immense and so sudden that I even went back to make sure I hadn't skipped an episode. Or 10. Imagine it like this: Kekkai Sensen jumps from what could be considered a mid-season finale in Season 1 right to the end of Season 2, with a third season still direly missing. With this shift it also throws all of its subtlety overboard and spends an entire episode on pure exposition to make it even possible to end the series with a 45-minute long special. We forget about the problem of Leonardo's eyes and his sister's blindness. For the longest time the Libra guys kept talking about some vampire-like creatures who had to be taken out. Those were the things that kept us going at the beginning. Suddenly they're irrelevant. Instead Leonardo has to save the world. This scene is foreshadowed at the beginning of episode 1, but there is absolutely nothing connecting those two elements. Judging from a casual conversation in the second half of the last episode, Kekkai Sensen is part of a much bigger conflict and we barely scratched the surface of what it wanted to be. I wouldn't know because nobody cared to tell me. Taking all of the questions I have and leaving me with even more questions is not a particularly good way to end a series. Keep in mind that a good ending is not necessarily an ending that is good for all of the characters, but it has to hammer in everything we have learned so far. In Kekkai Sensen's case, I'm left staring into the void. I don't like to think of it as a simple matter of style over substance either. The visual themes tie in with the narrative at the beginning, the most obvious one being vision. Leonardo's eyes contain the strongest superpower in the world. A lot of the shots have been taken from a first-person perspective, complete with blinking and shaking in some cases. Then there are photography and film. For both Leonardo and White, photography has become an important means of expression, and their photos contain memories of happier times. Leonardo's adventure with Libra begins when his camera is stolen. For some sequences, security footage is used, and the series certainly loves frames. It's painfully obvious that it tried to build something that just turned out to be too big for a meager 13 episodes. Rie Matsumoto's previous work, Kyosugiga, certainly looked wild. Behind all of its resplendent animation, it boiled down to a simple story about a patchwork family and all of its problems. The same can be said about the side stories in Kekkai Sensen. They are simple human dramas approaching modern issues in our society in a creative and new environment, making it even more aggravating that the series didn't get a proper ending. I mean, holy shit! Episode 6 was probably one of the single best episodes I have ever seen. The only explanation I can come up with is that something went really wrong in the production process. Maybe another 13 episodes got cancelled. Maybe there was a falling out with one of the staff members. Maybe they just gave up. I don't know. What I do know is that Kekkai Sensen is not a bad show, just disappointing and in the end somewhat empty, so much so that I don't feel comfortable recommending it. If you do want to form your own opinion, you can do so on Funimation and Hulu. Something I feel more than comfortable recommending is Redline, which has just as much of a unique setting and a complete story. Sure, it's a simple one about an underground racer, but it spends exactly the right amount of time on the characters and their conflicts for me to understand them. Other than in Kekkai Sensen, everything in Redline just clicks. If you like episodic stories, I also recommend the 2015 Lupin the Third spin-off, which I enjoyed so much that I have to review it in the future. If you're interested in that, then don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.